Hello, Kriegsspielers. We're going to talk about task organization as a concept and how it can help you improve your Kriegsspiel play. But before we get into some of these ideas, let's go ahead and address that one grumpy Kriegspieler on the brainstorming channel or in one of the discussion channels who will have, about some of these ideas, will have this to say.
By Jove, inconceivable. That is not historically accurate.
Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get down to talking a little bit about task organization. Most military organizations, and we talked about this in the Operations Order Logic video, and if you haven't watched that, go have a look at that. But most organizations look at the terrain and the enemy and who they have available and their mission, and when they structure how they are to do it, they recognize that having types of units stay together in blocks or single units of infantry, single units of cavalry or artillery oftentimes is not flexible enough for the situation at hand. So they task organize, and what this was called in the old days was attaching. So you would attach a type of a unit to another unit. So an infantry division or a regiment would have a cavalry attached to it. A cavalry unit would have engineers attached to it, etc., because they wanted to create all the capabilities that that specific unit would need to go do its mission. So let's talk through what a modernist task organization looks like, recognizing that we have to apply this idea to other eras to have it make sense. So in a modern organization, you might have an armored organization, which is the left-hand column with the circles. Then you'd have mechanized infantry organization, which would have 3 subunits, and then an artillery organization, and all those officers and soldiers would get together and they'd train together and they'd do things together. But very rarely would they go to war as a unit, because out there in the real world, the task at hand, the mission is going to need all of them to coordinate. So very rarely, if ever, do you see them all go as one unit. So what a modern organization will do is it will create a task force, and task organization is right there in the name. It's a force that's organized for a task. So in this case, in my hypothetical, the new Task Force 1 would be commanded by the armor commander from the original unit. He'd have 2 armored units, 1 mechanized infantry unit, and an artillery unit that would be dedicated to him. Now, they wouldn't roar around the battlefield together, but he'd have 1 artillery unit supporting that mission. Now that task force would be designed specifically for faster missions that would need more tanks. The infantry would be there to support them, but it would be a tank-heavy task force is what the phraseology was, at least quite a few years ago. I don't know what it would be called today. It might be called a flying monkey brigade, for all I know, in today's forces. But back then it was called an armored heavy task force. The infantry heavy task force, in this case mechanized infantry, would have 2 infantry, 1 armor. In this case, it would probably seek to take advantage of its infantry orientation. The armor would then support the infantry. So the 2 task forces would work together on different missions inside the overall commander's main mission. So task force organization is a really big part of military operations when we look at it. And in the case of, you say, well, what happens to commander number 3, the artillery commander? He would generally stay with one of his elements to make sure that all the artillery is supporting well. And he would move back and forth, or however he needs to disposition himself to support task force 1 and 2. So an artillery commander, for example, probably would not get armor and infantry working with him, right? So that's how that would work in a modern sense. And so clever Kriegsspiel play includes some of these ideas. So let's go ahead and go to the map. And it's the same exact situation, our beloved Karsdorf that we're defending. And again, if you haven't seen the op order video, go have a look at that. It talks about this in more detail. But in this, we have 3 infantry forces. I've added some artillery here and some cavalry. And as part of this situation, we know that there's a hill off over here, which if artillery is sighted on it well, can shoot down into this open area. And in our mission to defend Karsdorf, we've got to do something about this hill or take this hill into consideration. There's lots of things that we can do about that. So a smart commander would look and say, okay, well, I know that my main force is going to defend the town or maybe defend this area here, and then I have a secondary force that's going to defend here or be my reserve. What a clever commander would do is say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the task force idea, but again, we want to avoid this guy.
By Jove, inconceivable. That is not historically accurate.
And we want to use the concept of attachment. So we're going to attach units. What you do is you attach around a commander. So let's say that we say this commander is the cavalry commander. We're going to give him 3 cavalry, and then we're going to attach 1 infantry to him. So he'll be the cavalry commander with attachments. And then these infantry commanders, this commander here, is going to have 1 cavalry attached to him. And so he'll be able to go here. And then for the sake of this discussion, we'll say that this commander has a cavalry attached to him. And then this commander is responsible for this area. So what we've done is we've task organized in an era appropriate way, right? And so we don't call it Task Force Jones and Task Force Dumont. We just say that they're attached, okay? So in this case, let's talk about the easy stuff first. We'd give the mission to this group to say, you are to defend this eastern approach, okay? You are to defend this eastern approach. The cavalry is attached to you to be your eyes and ears out forward, okay? So that's pretty simple to consider, right? We give a very similar mission to this commander here. We'd say, okay, you have this cavalry here. Your mission is to defend this approach here. And this cavalry will be your eyes and ears. Okay, so you now have the infantry with eyes and ears through attachment. Now the cavalry commander would have a more interesting mission. The cavalry commander knows that he has to go forward and somewhat interrupt the most likely high-speed avenue of approach here. But he also has, as part of his mission, doing something about this hill here, right? So he has a more complex mission, and if you really wanted to go all the way down, you say, look, you have this entire area of operation, and your goal, in accordance with our overall intent to defend Karsdorf, is to slow the enemy coming this way and slow his deployment of artillery to the top of the hill here, right? Slow that down. There's no way that this small detachment is going to be able to stop that artillery from coming up here. But what you want to do is we want these guns up here much more slowly than the potential commander could get them up there, right? So that, in that case, the artillery commander could say, the cavalry commander would say, okay, well, that's interesting. Infantry, you go and dig in on this hill here, and then you rehearse a way to escape down to here. We're going to take our cavalry and we're going to act as dismounted infantry up here in the front. I will stay at the front. Cavalry 1, you'll be the first to dismount just by this town here. And you guys would be like this. And when the enemy comes this way, let's get some red for the enemy. Okay. When the enemy comes this way, or they come down this way, etc., and they start to come toward us, we're going to put up a brisk fight, and then we're going to remount, head back here. The commander will stay up here. You're going to head back here, and you'll probably be disrupted, so you'll get your kind of troops together, take care of casualties and wounded, etc., and all that. And then second group, you'll do the same here, and you'll put up a bit of a fight, and then you'll sneak back here. And then, of course, you won't be surprised by the next instruction is third group, you'll do here, right? So what's going to happen is the enemy's going to come down here and fight. They're actually fighting 3 mini battles that are a little irritating, but a little more stubborn than just kind of cavalry running around. And then they're probably going to take and try to get a couple infantry units to come up here. They have to attack uphill. What they find up there is a dug-in force that's going to put up a bit of a fight, right? So what originally for the enemy looked to them like, hey, let's just let's just send out some cavalry and kind of come roaring down this road here, set up here, put our artillery up here, shoot down. Well, it's all going to be all good, and we'll be in Karsdorf for Christmas, right? Instead of that, they suddenly find themselves embroiled in these little mini fights out here. And then when they try to get up there, they found a dug-in enemy there who's kind of pushing them back a bit, slowing them down. So their artillery sits back here and can't get up that hill, right? Just can't get up that hill. So this would be a subunit mission of a task organized group. And by the way, the last thing I would do here is that the infantry can come down and use these now reconstituted cavalry to screen them and try to escape back across the bridge. Or that infantry might end up doing a little swimming over here or whatever. But they've done good work, and that cavalry commander will be mentioned in dispatches. Okay, so this would be an example of a cavalry commander doing an interesting mission with multiple dimensions, using his cavalry as dismounted infantry, and then participating in the larger mission of keeping those guns delayed so that this field next to Karsdorf doesn't become a fire zone for that artillery. So that would be using task organization as it was used back in the day, and enabling commanders to do interesting submissions. So somebody's going to say, well, when I look at Waterloo and the Earl of Uxbridge was dashing around with his cavalry and all the rest, and these different, the Imperial cavalry was dashing around, they didn't task organize, so that's not historically accurate. Well, in that case, if you look at it, it's really the whole battlefield. The entire army was task organized because entire regiments of cavalry or divisions of cavalry were behaving as the cavalry arm, and then divisions of infantry doing the same. So the task organization remained at the army level for very large battles. But as you fight smaller battles in our Kriegsspiel games, as you get down to the battalion and regimental levels, maybe in some modern games, always think about how you can mix your forces up intelligently so that you're not sending infantry to do a job that maybe needs a couple more types of units to help it out. So I hope that helps in bringing some additional skill to your Kriegsspiel game, and we'll see you out there on the board. Thanks so much.